what we know about the family member when somebody in your family or, relation is struggling with addiction, that family members have heightened anxiety, depression, physical illness, and spend 30% more on their own healthcare needs. There's a true impact on the family unit as well. And there can be a lot of shame that we have when we think we're doing something wrong or we caused it or, all these things. We're ready for a new narrative around this.
Hi, I'm Barb Nangle. I want to welcome you to my podcast, Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery, where I help people heal their emotional, psychological, and spiritual wounds and make deep, lasting changes in their lives. I'm the founder and CEO of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting, LLC, where I coach people on how to develop healthy boundaries. On this podcast, I share my experience, strength, and hope from recovery. I don't support or endorse any particular 12-step recovery fellowship, and I don't claim to speak for any particular 12-step fellowship. I also don't believe that 12-step recovery is the only way to recover. You might need additional help. My hope is that you'll find my words concretely helpful in improving your life, whether you're in recovery or not. This is episode 140. It's a guest episode with Jane Macky, and she's going to talk about loving someone through addiction. Jane, welcome to Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. I'm so grateful to have you here today.
Thank you, Bob, for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I so appreciate you. I just want to let folks know that I met Jane professionally through a project called Innovation to Impact at Yale. And it is a project that teaches entrepreneurial principles to substance use researchers because we're trying to help people who are either treating substance use problems or trying to prevent them. We're trying to help them to get their ventures to market much more quickly by teaching them entrepreneurial principles. And when I heard her story, I was like, oh my God, I have to have you as a guest on my podcast. And lucky for me and for you, she agreed because she has an amazing story to share with you. And it's about loving someone through addiction. So Jane, I'm going to let you take it away, and I might pipe in with a question here or there. And I probably will have questions at the end, but I'm going to let you go ahead and share your experience, strength, and hope on loving someone through addiction.
Yeah, it takes me back. It's hard for me actually to remember years. I don't know if this happens to you or any other listeners, but when you're kind of caught up in loving someone through addiction, those periods of time can get a little chaotic and a little warbled in our minds, I think. I'm from New Zealand. I came over to study. I actually did undergrad at Yale and studied psychology. Graduating in 2009, I thought, I have to get a proper job. I can't continue just studying. I need, something that's going to pay my own bills. And so I was looking for any kind of job, advertising, which I thought kind of related to that sort of mindset of, what are people thinking and feeling and how do we connect with them as a brand. I found a really exciting startup in New York City that was actually Kiwi New Zealand founded as well. And I joined them. I was doing strategy. I worked closely with sort of the executive team. It was a fast-moving startup, a really innovative mobile advertising agency working with the likes of Victoria's Secret, Trojan Condoms, Kraft Foods, like top Fortune 500 companies. I met there a man that would become very quickly my best friend and close working colleague. And he was creative. He was loved by the clients. You wanted him in the room because the clients loved him. He could tell a story. He could get the idea across. He was very convincing and charismatic. We would be working late on these pitches. For anyone that's ever been in the advertising industry, late night, sort of blowing off steam after work as well was kind of the norm, going to bars and that sort of thing as a group. But one night we were working together. It's getting late. I'm thinking we're going to be here all night. We should order dinner. And he pulls out a line of Coke. And that was my first sort of feeling of like, this is starting to, maybe be a problem. And that just so interesting that my, the sort of inbuilt coping mechanisms for me is like get food, get dinner. And for him, it's like, oh, this is going to perk me right up and we'll get through the night. Mm-hmm. And just that kind of natural instinct in him that for me felt like dangerous. Over time, I watched him spiral. And for me, what really struck me and really I couldn't let go of was just this fact that like we knew he was struggling and we were out in the world, like his family was far away. They didn't know what was going on. And it just didn't seem like there was a language to connect with him about this. Like, I didn't know how to bring it up. Like, I didn't know, it was scary to share it with other people because maybe that would be dangerous for him. And it was the first moment for me of thinking, like, oh, addiction can happen to amazing people. I did not know that. It's not just someone who is morally corrupt or like a bad person.
Right.
And that was kind of the nugget that got me kind of hooked to like learn more.
Yeah, there's a lot of stereotypes that are just bullshit about addiction. It's a disease, it's not a moral failing, but that's part of the shame of getting treatment is that people have this idea that it's a moral failing, and then when they learn more, they realize, oh, I have an illness. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so it was just heartbreaking to me to see this person struggle. And I think, again, probably like a lot of listeners here and yourself, like you kind of have this instinct, you're like, this person needs love. They need connection. Like there's something missing that we as humans could provide if only we knew how, or if we could kind of not turn a blind eye and not just like let it kind of, let him get over it on his own. Over time, I really dove in. I thought there was something really missing to me in the fact that we were using digital really innovatively to connect these Fortune 500 brands to sell more cheese to, people. Why, when I went online, couldn't I find an answer of like what to do, best friend, cocaine addiction, like what do I say? Like, and it felt like rehabs were the only option. We couldn't even talk about it. That was not anywhere near where we were at that time. So yeah, I absorbed as much information as I could. I read books. I called a therapy on his behalf at one point. They said, we think you need help. And so I ended up in therapy. I found that quite offensive at the time, of course.
Of course, yeah.
They advised, go to Al-Anon, Nar-Anon. I found Nar-Anon a little more helpful just because of his drug of choice. But then I also found it really tough because I would be at Nar-Anon, people would say, you're not in a relationship with this person. Like, you can leave, just like get out of this. I found in therapy that, it was a good place for me to talk, but I didn't have actions. And similar with the Nar-Anon, very, very supportive. Like, it was really helpful to feel like I was around people that understood it and I was not alone. I did not know how many people it's impacted. And I now am like fully aware 1 in 7 Americans will struggle with addiction in their lifetime. And when they do, people around them really care and want to help. And if you don't know anyone now, there's every chance at some point you will. So it's much more the norm than the oddity. But yeah, I struggled with what could I actually do going home? What actions could I take? And it wasn't until I discovered craft. He eventually got into therapy. His therapist gave him a book called Beyond Addiction, which outlines the craft method, community reinforcement, and family training. And that really struck a chord with me. It's a behavioral approach. So it's very much about what can I do when I'm trying to like convince him that he needs help, or go into conversation with him in a caring way, and also try to, make life better now while trying to also work on the problem. Because one thing that he said to me a lot was, the substance wasn't the problem, that his job was too stressful, that his life was out of order. And I sort of would just say, well, let's get the substance use under control. If we got rid of that, everything would be more manageable. And what I learned was that it's all contributing, and that we could actually make steps on, and I could have listened better and been more curious as to his experience and got more insight into how I could have been helpful, or how we could, people around him could have been more helpful. As time went on, and maybe, not surprisingly, I did have really strong feelings for this man. He is now my husband. He did eventually, get into rehab, and he's been in recovery, though, his own kind of unique version of that. He still drinks and, stays away from like what for him was like the really problematic substance, which was cocaine. Again, I like get bad with the time, but I think he's over the 5-year milestone, and maybe even to 6 years now. And I think another sort of thing that's been really surprising to me is just, I really thought that, we get him into rehab and then, he comes out the other side and we're going to be like happily married, like walking in the park, everything's good.
Right.
I don't like to, generalize. Everyone has a unique journey, but I think for a lot of people that is not the case. And he was very, very depressed after, the substance was removed, and he didn't have that reward system working for him. And it took a long time for him to get stable. And even what I like to share is that I saw so much improvement from year to year. It's helpful to know that because I expected so much out of him and that wasn't helpful. He would say things like to me, you're moving the goalposts. And for him, just getting through the day not using for a long time was all he could do. And it was hard for me to understand.
Right. Huge accomplishment. Yeah.
So that's a bit kind of about what, drew me into the space. And then I think, on the flip side, as you know, I've now sort of dedicated my life to this, trying to make a difference for people like myself going through this that similarly want those actions.
Yeah. So you mentioned craft, and I never can remember what all those letters stand for. So can you again say what craft stands for and then do a little bit of an explanation about what that is?
I mean, this is the thing that also struck me. I was like, oh, I found this really great thing. Why was that not the first thing I was told about? Or why is it not, when I search online, why is that not the answer coming up?
Yeah, and actually, I learned about it from you. And I learned it, I was watching Jane's pitch, and she recommended the book.
Getting your loved ones sober without yelling and fighting, I think is the tagline.
It was amazing. And I was like, how the hell come I've never, even heard of this book before? I've been in recovery for years, and I'm in a people program, which is, helping people that have been influenced by those who are addicts their entire lives. And I've never heard of it, and nobody I know of has ever heard of it. So that was astonishing to me.
I think what's interesting about the way we met, as you described, we were in a program that was about, translating research into the marketplace. And that's exactly what happened, I think, with CRAFT. So CRAFT stands for Community Reinforcement and Family Training. Community reinforcement approach is actually an evidence-based method that is oftentimes very effective with adolescents and adults who are recovering from a substance use disorder. It's a behavioral approach. What is really interesting, though, is that one of the early researchers, Dr. Robert Myers, who was working with the creator of CRA, discovered incredibly motivated. So this was a CRA, work where they're working with the person with a substance use disorder. They noticed that family members would come and they would be incredibly motivated to help, and that by starting to develop some curriculum and some training for them, some therapy for them, that they could really make a huge impact just by the nature of their having a relationship with this person, interacting with them a lot, and the way that their communication and behavior could influence a positive outcome. CRAFT has been studied at least, I think, over 10 randomized clinical trials now, more also other kinds of clinical trials as well. And it has consistent outcomes. So it's very effective. It's been measured specifically at simply by working with a family member, increasing the chances a lot of getting that loved one into treatment. So oftentimes when somebody is struggling with addiction, by its definition, it's continued use or continued behavior despite the harm of that behavior. So it's natural. It makes sense. Okay, you're continuing to use despite the harm. It's going to be hard to get that person into treatment. And we do see only about 10% of people with a substance use disorder get treatment that could really help them. Yeah, so CRAFT is reliably able to help just one family member. Just all it takes is one family member learning the CRAFT method with 12 weeks of training in CRAFT. Their chances of getting the loved one into treatment are about 7 in 10.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, when it's compared to other methods, so like the traditional interventions or Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, those are more around the 30% rate compared direct head-to-head. Al-Anon, Nar-Anon is not designed with that objective. So it's a little bit...
Right, agreed.
It's not like that's what it's trying to do, but I think that just shows that, CRAFT is good at that kind of objective. And they've also measured it with just decreasing harmful substance use as well. So it's an effective harm reduction method, that the family member feels better. What we know about the family member, when somebody in your family or, relation is struggling with addiction, that family members have heightened anxiety, depression, physical illness, and spend 30% more on their own healthcare needs. And so it really, there's a true impact on the family unit as well. And so that's really important.
So I think that was a good point that you made, that Nar-Anon and Al-Anon are not, the point of them is not to get the person into treatment. It's for you to learn how to live your life and not be swept up, in the addiction with them.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like the craft method and maybe Al-Anon or Nar-Anon together might be a nice combo, even though craft helps people feel better in their lives. So can you give us a couple of examples of the concrete things that people learn in the craft method?
Yeah, so one of the core principles is communication. The craft skill is positive communication. What we're trying to do with positive communication, there are 7 tips. Let me see if I can remember them all. Be brief, be specific, use your own feelings. So I feel this, as opposed to you're making me feel this. I understand, show that you have empathy, take some responsibility in the situation. So oftentimes people struggling with addiction always feel like the bad guy, bad girl, whatever, but we make mistakes too. Like I say things I don't mean, I get frustrated, I don't know how to show up well. Those sorts of things that can really bring down the defenses in communication. Offer to help. I think I've forgotten one of them or I've missed one.
I'll put them in the show notes. If we don't get them all right here, I'll definitely put them in the show notes so that people can, and also put a reference to the book and all that kind of stuff in the show notes so people can have it.
I often say it's very straightforward, but it's like when you've been in a habit of communicating in a different way, or if communication is sort of disconnected, these things can be really effective. And it's sort of about doing these consistently. So you're not one day yelling and getting angry and then oscillating. It's sort of creating a new pattern of behavior. So the communication is one side. Another side is if you think about training a dog. This is maybe not a good example, but it's very obvious.
Well, people can understand it. I mean, people understand what you're saying. So this is a metaphor.
Yeah, my sister just got a puppy, and so I've been watching the puppy and give him a treat, and he'll do he'll love you, all this stuff.
Positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement. Yeah. So that's another big one as well. Is we want to positively reinforce and make good behavior, the healthy behavior, the sober behavior, more rewarding. Because right now their reward system is all out of whack. They've only been getting rewards, or mostly only getting the rewards from the substances. So we want to make sure that a walk in the park is really fun, or going for coffee. Those are things that I like to do. But also recognizing that a walk in the park, you might get cold or sweaty if it's too hot, or you might get tired. And so just understanding the reinforcements around behaviors and trying to figure out, and that's what we work with people to do, is to look at their unique sort of situation and relationship. What's going to be the behaviors that are reinforcing for their loved one? How do we maximize them? Or even just loved one takes the rubbish out. Hey, thanks for doing that. And some of the couples we work with, they're like, why do I need to thank them for taking the rubbish out? But what also gets sort of diminished in addiction is the self-efficacy, the belief that I can be an effective human being. And so we're really trying to build up all those positive behaviors. And then on the other side, we're thinking about how to make sure that we're not positively reinforcing you. So sometimes even getting in a fight could be reinforcing, because if they want, if somebody maybe subconsciously or unconsciously sort of wants attention, we could be rewarding substance use without knowing. And so those are the types of things that we want to look at with people. And it might just sound like, oh, that's sort of nice, and maybe I sort of do that. But the thing for me is I've seen it work in our family. I've seen it work for other people. I wouldn't be so passionate about it if I hadn't. It's like when you see something work and really change a family, that for me is a huge driving force.
Right. And that's with me, with my own personal recovery as a lifelong self-help junkie, was in therapy for decades, did workshops and retreats and all that kind of stuff. Recovery literally felt like it was digging up the riverbed of my life and redirecting it. And I saw it work in my own life in this deep and profound way where nothing else did. Mm-hmm. And I watch all these other people recover. And it's especially true for my people program, because it has to do with, growing up in a family where all these dysfunctional patterns were laid down in my life that I didn't know were dysfunctional. Yeah. and I didn't recognize them for what they were. And so things have really changed for me. And this is one reason why I do this podcast, because there's so much that I learned in recovery that people who are never going to find their way into recovery, and maybe they don't need to, could still use these lessons. So I hear
Totally.
you. Yeah. It's like you want to like shout from the mountaintop. So what I remember from your story was that you had been working in this startup world and you were like, okay, we're able to like get this technology to people like really quickly, like on the computer or on a phone. And yet we have this gigantic problem of addiction and addiction recovery and loving people through addiction. And we're not able to get that super important information to
Yeah.
people. And so then that's how you came up with your venture. Am I
Yeah.
remembering that correctly?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, why can we sell cheese through an app? You know, which is like, I love cheese actually. So I'm, it's
Yeah.
like give me more cheese, make it more accessible.
Yes, yes. I love it.
Like just like you said, you hadn't heard of craft. You're in the industry. You're in the recovery, world. And so for me, it was, I could not believe that this stuff wasn't more accessible online. And when I learned craft, and like I said, it's straightforward. It's not rocket science, but it is behavior change. And so that does take time. It does take intention and sort of feedback and that sort of thing. In 2007, I was invited as I had really sort of started dedicating my life to learning about addiction. I had been to, the UN General Assembly on drugs in 2016, and I'd
That
started.
is some commitment.
Yeah, yeah, just so passionate about it. Just so yeah, it just really struck this like itch that I was like, there's something here that the world is missing, and I want to be part of changing that. And so I was invited to a venture capital in Manhattan as an expert to like sit around a round table and sort of brainstorm about addiction with potential founders of a new addiction venture. And sitting there, I said, well, I've been waiting for an opportunity to do something. And I think with my husband, that we'd question like, would we work together on it since we worked well together. He at that time didn't want to make his life about the subject matter. He wanted to do other things. It was during that process, and it was with Human Ventures, that I got the opportunity to start going into a company building, sort of a couple sprints, and went through that with them. And it really helped me solidify that that was where I wanted to spend, my career and my efforts and dedicate myself. We went through various iterations. I will say, like, where we are now is not all that different to like where we started off, which was, we wanted to look at the family piece. We wanted to fill a gap there. We just didn't know exactly how we would do it. And we did sort of think that craft would be a part of it. But it was through sort of really testing in the market, working with people, that I think also I built that confidence. Like I said, I started working with people online doing craft in various different kinds of ways, like leveraging digital, and sort of like MVP type of products. Started to see it
MVP
work.
being minimum viable product for those people not in the world of entrepreneurship and startups. Not most valuable player. That's what most people think that means.
Just like little, like the sort of scrappiest sort of digital way we could put things together. And my first client actually was able to get, she literally came to me and said that she was imagining the apartment she would buy sort of down the street when she left her husband. She just had tried everything, didn't know what to do, couldn't get through to him, absolutely adored this person and didn't want to leave, but just like couldn't figure out how to get through this alcoholism.
But she'd resigned herself to the fact that she was leaving. Like she realized like that she felt like it was her only
She
option.
was seeking help, so she'd come to us. She started joining some of our groups. At that time, we were doing some online groups. And then in our real sort of minimal version of the product we have now, I took her through, coaching her through the craft curriculum, like in sort of our translation of it online. And she was eventually able to get her husband into a rehab. He's been sober ever since. I think he just had his like 2-year sober sort of anniversary, and she's now a trained coach for us and working for us.
Nice. Awesome.
But yeah, that was the first sort of working with someone and sort of knowing, okay, this isn't just me, this can work for other people. And there's a group of people out there like myself and like Angie that really want this and need this. And
Mm-hmm.
for us, we got a call from NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse, who were just looking for people that were working in the space that they could support, that would fit within their goals and their sort of vision and mission of their funding objectives. And so we entered their small business innovation research sort of grant system and got our phase 1, which allowed us to start doing a clinical pilot trial, which we did end of 2019 and beginning of 2020. So we actually took that minimal product we had, we turned it into a customer facing, like consumable, like purchasable product, and it's V1 to the world, ran a clinical trial, pilot clinical trial, and got the same results that craft gets in comparison to other methods. So we were comparing it to an online community that we have. So like it's a support community, but it doesn't offer that skills training. And we were able to get 77% of the families got their loved one into a new treatment. Goodness. And the families that had a loved one already in treatment at the start of working through our program had 100% retention in the treatment that they're in.
Oh my goodness, that's astonishing. Wow. Tell us more.
Yeah, and I mean it's really exciting because we have had the privilege of working with the creator of Craft, the Dr. Myers, who I mentioned before. He helped us translate the Craft protocol into the online setting into a digital course with 12 modules. So one module, one skill week to week, and then also develop the protocol for the coaching to go alongside. So the product is a mix of going online, consuming a small amount of information through video and worksheet content, starting to apply the concept to your life, and then coming into a live coaching session individually or in a group and learning the skill more practically with feedback from a certified craft coach, and also hearing from other. I think, the group is really where we're leaning a lot of effort. It allows us to provide it at a much more cost-effective,
of course, yeah,
point for the consumer or for the families, which is really, really important to us. I think that was another thing coming into this, like digital could help us make this a lot more affordable. Like, why is everything in addiction treatment so expensive, especially when it's such a long journey?
Yeah, and the group setting, you also get that mutual support, which is one of the things that I found in recovery that's been just enormously helpful, to have people that know precisely what you're going through.
Yeah,
is just, I mean, it's invaluable.
It's interesting because in our phase 1 pilot, we trialed the group version, so group plus the course content or individual plus the course content, and we found it was very small, so significance in terms of the statistical, like research significance, but there was a slightly higher, better result in the group. And so in our phase 2, which we're now entering into at the moment, which will be a larger scale trial, we'll go from 45 participants to 212. We're actually just leaning into the group because we did find it to be so effective. We really believe in the model. Like you said, it adds something really special. And again, we love that price point for people, so it doesn't have to be such a burden.
Wonderful. So you haven't mentioned what the name of your venture is.
Yeah, so we're called We the Village, an intentional name because our belief really is that if we could all, come around addiction, it would be very hard for it to persist. These people oftentimes, it's like they're walking out in the world with like an umbrella over them, and like we just kind of like let them walk by, or we don't know what to do with them. And yeah, my ultimate vision is that if we can all, like as a society, like all learn to talk about this and sort of address it lovingly, that we'll be able to get on top of it a lot easier, sort of reduce the harm for a lot of people and a lot of families. So it's We the Village.
So of course we will put a link to that in the show notes. And now that you've named it, is there more that you want to say about We the Village? And that, because my guess is people are going to be like, let me just click on the link right now so I can learn more about it. So maybe just briefly, like what are their options? What do they experience? What can they choose from?
Yeah, so we do have a free online community. It's a question and answer style community. The goal is really that people are sharing their experiences in a sort of productive way. So it's, this is going on. Is this going on for anyone else? Like, what have other people done that have worked?
Okay.
Totally free. Anyone can join. open 24/7. Um,
Awesome. Love it.
and then on the craft side, we have our online course. We offer 3 tiers to access that. So there's a 12-week online course, without coaching, if you just want to get a taste for the curriculum and start to get some more understanding. Then we have the group course, which is our sort of middle tier option. That's $129 a month for 3 months. And then we have our higher level tier, which is the private coaching. So that's for someone that really just wants the individual attention. And that goes alongside, again, the course. So we're always working within the course framework.
Gotcha.
Our goal is that people get these skills. Once you've got the skills, we can continue to work together. We have another group that graduates of the skills course can go into. That's a little bit more free form, less rigid in terms of the topic each week. But because we've seen these skills work for people, we're really, really passionate about making sure they get them. We sort of see it as like the toolkit to walking alongside a loved one's recovery, and they can be applicable sort of wherever you are in that journey. So we're really passionate about getting that out there. The other thing is we do have this clinical pilot going live Q2 of next year. So around April, we'll begin sort of allowing people to check out if they're eligible in February, March of 2022. For people who are eligible, it will be free for them if they want to join this pilot. There are sort of eligibility criteria that people have to meet to participate in that, but it's a great option for someone that does meet those eligibility criteria.
Do you know what those are right now, or are you still deciding?
So the funding from the National Institute of Drug Abuse is opiate focused. So it is people that loved one have an opiate addiction issue, and then there are some other things like you have to be able to access the computer because we have the online content and some other things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but particularly good for someone who is loving someone with an opiate use disorder problem, who does have some face time with them. The craft method is really designed for people that do have like a relationship and are able to interact with their loved ones. So
not somebody that you're estranged from.
Yeah, and we have had people that, even might be living in the same house, but they're not speaking currently, and they can still do work because they're, they do see each other and that sort of thing. But if any of that sounds like somebody out there, then I would recommend just going through the eligibility criteria or the screening with us, and we'll have a study phone number as well, so you can call in and ask questions.
So I'm assuming they're going to go to wethevillage.org, and they'll be able to see right there where they can sign up for or to check out the eligibility criteria?
Yeah, wethevillage.co.
.co, okay.
We'll have a link there.
Yeah.
We'll have information on our website. Should be starting to communicate about that more openly for the February 2022, so a little way away.
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, you'll have to be sure to share that with me so that I can share it with my community too. And this is perfect because, we always record early, but this episode is due to come out on December 27th of 2021. So this is perfect timing. So the people who are listening right on time, hopefully will be able to participate or at least check it out and see if they're eligible. So
yeah, and actually I can give you my email, and for anyone that wants to just put their name on a wait list,
sure.
So I can reach out to them. I can do that as well because people want to be reminded later.
Yeah, absolutely. I will put your email address in the show notes. Wonderful. I feel like you have answered the questions that I have. Was there anything else that you feel like people might want to know, or typical questions that you get from people that you haven't had an opportunity to share about yet? Yeah,
it's really nice to be here with you. I think I was so grateful to be in the Innovation to Impact cohort with you and to have such a shared passion and dedication that we both have in this space.
Yeah, and I was really pleased when I was reading the applications and that you got accepted in there, because so many other people are actually just working directly with the addicts, which is of course important, but there's so many more people affected by addiction that aren't the addicts. And so it's about time we pay attention to them. And I just loved everything that I heard. And I was like, we have to talk about this and we have to spread the word about this. So I will be sure to put all this information that we've talked about in the show notes. And I will also put Jane's email address, as we said, so if people have specific questions, they can email her directly. Of course, you can contact me, and I'll do the best I can to either answer them or get your issues directed to Jane. But I'm sure that you would love to hear from people directly.
Yeah, definitely.
Any last words before we go?
Thank you for having me. And I think, I'm sure we share this, Bob, Dr. Robert Myers, who created Craft and who works directly with our company, We the Village, and is a really inspiring mentor of mine. He calls family members that are trying to help loved ones heroes. And I think that there can be a lot of shame that we have when we think we're doing something wrong, or we caused it, or all these things, and that we're ready for a new narrative around this. And
a new language. Yes, I love it. I'm going to steal that. Heroes.
It's heroic to try and save your family.
Of course. And I remember hearing years ago, before I was ever even aware that that I was an addict or something, that and back then I never heard the word codependent. The language was enabling, which was very shaming. I heard a clinical psychologist doing a presentation about something. I don't remember what it was. And she said, this enabling behavior comes from somewhere good and healthy. And it was the first time I had ever heard anybody say that. And this was probably 15 years ago. And I still remember it because it was so unusual to anything that I'd ever heard. And it really stuck with me. And I always meant to go back to her and say, what did you mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like you're kind of finally fleshing that out for me here, and that we need to be taught how to do this, this positive interaction. And, when you were talking about like the method of communication, I think about like what I teach people about is how to have healthy boundaries. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I teach them about communicating boundaries is we want to tell people what we want. We want to focus on what we want, not what we don't want.
I think that's the one that I forgot. We call that positive framing, like a positive action versus a negative, like don't do that versus this is what I'd like to see. It's a lot easier for people to follow through.
Right, yeah. Or I love it when you blah, blah, blah,
Yeah. I love that.
I love it.
I could talk forever on this topic. So
yeah, if people want to have her come back, send me a DM either on Instagram or Facebook and let me know, and we'll invite her back. And also, if you have questions for her, you can send them to me, or you can send them to her through her email address, which we'll put in the show notes. But I think if that's it for you, then we will sign off for today. Thank you again so much, not just for being her, but for doing the work and for being so committed to not just your husband's recovery, but for all the loved ones of the people who are addicts out there, and helping us learn, how to manage our relationships in such a way that it's more likely to lead our loved one into recovery. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Bob.
I was recently reminded by a friend that when I first started recovery, I didn't feel lovable. I almost can't believe that I used to feel that way, and that I kind of forgot something so profound, because I truly love myself now. And I want that for everybody. If you don't love yourself, there's literally nothing that can make up for that. I created something exclusively for my private clients, since many of them don't love themselves. And I've now opened up my private vault to share it with up to 10 people individually. It's called the Self-Love Sprint. You'll grow to love yourself and truly feel worthy, so you can stop saying yes when you really want to say no, stop neglecting yourself and putting everyone else first, stop saying all kinds of nasty shit to yourself. That is not what people who love themselves and feel deserving do. You'll stop being afraid that others will think that you're selfish for taking time to care for yourself. This is also for you if you don't really know who you are because you've always been such a fucking chameleon. Go to higherpowercc.com/love sprint. Remember, I'm only offering 10 of these, so don't wait. If you like this podcast, and I'm guessing you did or you wouldn't still be listening, then you're gonna love the other things I have to offer. If you'd love pre-release podcast scripts and episodes before anyone else gets them, or if you'd love access to content from my private vault that I developed exclusively for my private clients, which is like having a work session with me without me actually being there, go to patreon.com/higherpowercoaching. There are 3 tiers ranging from as low as $4 up to $24 a month. You'll also love my weekly newsletter, Friday Fragments, which has content very similar to the podcast. You can check it out at fridayfragments.news. That's fridayfragments.news. Please like and subscribe to my podcast on your favorite podcast outlet. I'd also love it if you'd leave a review, which you can do either in the show notes or on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other people find my podcast so they can get the benefits you've gotten from listening. If someone came to mind when you listened to this particular episode, please share it with them. And my favorite place to hang out on social media is Instagram. I'm at Higher Power Coaching. Please DM me there. I'd love to hear what you got from this episode. I run group and private coaching programs on building healthy boundaries. Whether you need help with boundaries in your personal, professional, or romantic life, I can help. Head on over to barbchat.net, where you can hop onto my calendar for a free 30-minute Better Boundaries consultation. My ideal client is someone who is ripe for change. If that's you, I would love to work with you. My goal with all my work is to help you make lasting changes in your life like I've made deep, lasting changes in my life. Remember, it's never too late to recover. No one is beyond hope, and healing is possible. Thanks for listening.